Okay, one more set of squats. Some tells me this one's going to be a grind. But then the news. Brian Fung, CNN. SCOTUS declines to address Section 230 protections in Gonzalez v. Google and shields Twitter from liability for terror-related content in Twitter v. Tamna. I haven't followed closely either of these cases, so I'm not especially familiar with what they address, but my very general understanding is that they had the courts heard these cases, there was the possibility that the Section 230 protection would have been found to be unconstitutional, I suppose, which would have massive implications for every internet company you can think of, I think. So maybe it's a good thing that they didn't address the case, but like I said, I haven't been following closely, so. Mark Gurman, Bloomberg. Sources detail Apple's headset ahead of WWDC, shifting the vision from eyeglasses to ski goggles, Tim Cook's product non-involvement, selling at cost, and more. Yeah, you kind of have to sell the ski goggles version before the eyeglasses version, considering their fundamental, you know, electrical and optical and other hardware engineering breakthroughs that don't really exist yet in order to sell the eyeglass version of the thing. The rest of this, though, we're close enough to the announcement at this point that the inner child in me would rather not read a bunch of this stuff and would rather be surprised in 3 weeks' time. I'm not sure how much surprise there will be left to have, but we'll know soon enough. Wall Street Journal. Montana Governor Greg Gianforte signs the country's first bill that bans TikTok in a state, set to go into effect on January 1st, 2024. This is going to be amusing to watch. I find it especially interesting. I came across this news yesterday on Blue Sky at some point. Somebody mentioned it. And so I was aware that it was going to happen. What I wasn't aware of until right now is that it's not set to go into effect until the beginning of next year. That strikes me as sort of a starting gun of sorts. Like, if you compete with TikTok in any way, you should identify this as the moment to put the pedal to the metal and do everything you can to deliver an on parity experience with TikTok in your own product by January 1st of next year. Like, you've got this fixed period of time where you know, and implementation details are TBD here, but let's just imagine the most straightforward of versions of this. As of January 1st, you won't be able to download the TikTok app onto an Apple device or a device with Google Play services. You might even have the app forcibly removed from your devices. Set aside the sort of intellectual and ethical aspects of that conversation. Just focus on the idea that as of January 1st, TikTok won't be available to the people of Montana. There's a vacuum there. And the question is your product, whether that's Snap or Instagram or Twitter or some net new competitor, will it be as well positioned as it can to pick up that opportunity? I think that's going to be especially interesting. Who Jones, Reuters. A UK Treasury Committee crypto report recommends the government regulate trading and investment in unbacked crypto as gambling instead of a financial service. That's an interesting point of view. Frankly, one that I'm surprised I haven't heard before. The United Kingdom has a much more open and sort of evolved relationship to gambling than the United States does, at least for most of my life in the United States. The idea that you can go and play with crypto so long as the government enforces clear communication to you as the user that what you're doing is fundamentally gambling, as opposed to some kind of financial service that has the tries to convince you of its long-term stability, which investing in many cryptocurrency projects, they definitely make their efforts to try and convince you of that fact, right? That like getting in early is key to, long-term appreciation of the asset, whether that's the coin or, something else. So, yeah, I hope that we see more of this line of questioning with regard to crypto projects, because that's, I don't know, just feels right. Subarashi Ghosh, Bloomberg. Binance Australia can no longer offer Aussie dollar deposits due to a decision by Cuscal, quote, our payment processor's partner bank, unquote, and warns of disruptions. Highly related crypto malarkey to the previous story. Binance offering to take deposits in a currency which the banking institution that holds the regulatory authority to house, citizens' deposits that they partnered with in Australia is not convinced that it's in the best interest of those would-be depositors to do business with Binance. We're going to continue to make this sort of progress, and I think this is another piece of that, right? The banking institutions that saw an opportunity for maybe their own benefit by partnering with a cryptocurrency business of one stripe or another, being a little more sober about that decision, probably in the best long-term interests of the average citizen. Todd Spangler, Variety. YouTube unveils 30-second unskippable ads on top-performing videos on televisions and says more than 150 million unique US viewers watched YouTube or YouTube TV on televisions in December of 2022. Not great, but not entirely unsurprising. Not clear from this headline also whether being a YouTube Premium subscriber protects you from these unskippable ads when you're watching YouTube on your television. But frankly, the meat of the story here is, yeah, we might be entering the final innings of considering a television to be anything other than an especially large display that shows you whatever you would want to consume on any other display. I'm, again, old enough that I recall the initial launch of the Apple set-top box. It was called iTV at that point. It wasn't called Apple TV. And it was clear to me at that exact moment in time that there are visual experiences that exist on the things we refer to as computing machines, laptops, desktops, smartphones, whatever, that are better or are likely to be better on larger displays. For my money, the fact that there isn't a way to experience Instagram from your couch looking at a panel that's 10 feet away is a missed opportunity. They've spent the last 5 years, if not more, slowly but surely becoming like the personalized home shopping network. The fact that I can't do that on the largest display in my home seems like a missed opportunity. But YouTube is the other painfully obvious example here, right? Like it is the same type of experience that you traditionally used a television to do, but because it was born on computing machines, we've treated it like some other thing. The fact that YouTube is getting out in front of that now and saying very plainly, like, we exist on televisions and we garner a meaningful share of the US market's consumer attention. And so we can create advertising opportunities and turn them around and sell them to all the same people who have been buying advertising opportunities from traditional broadcast networks and cable networks for as long as I've been alive. So good work, YouTube. Keep going. Nikkei Asia. Sources. Apple plans to get directly involved in microLED display production to reduce its reliance on Samsung after spending more than $1 billion on R&D in nearly 10 years. This is inevitable, I suppose, to the extent that you believe Tim Cook's statement from, gosh, maybe 10 years ago. We want to be, I'm going to butcher the paraphrasing, directly invested in the fundamental components necessary to produce the products that we produce. Yeah, you gotta own displays. It is a thing that Apple users have loved about Apple products for a long, long time, is the caliber of the display and the extent to which the company invests in making that aspect of the experience as great as it can possibly be. To date, they don't manufacture their own panels. We used to say the same thing about their CPUs and GPUs, right? We used to say, like, Apple's great at taking off-the-shelf components from Intel or Motorola before them and assembling them into a greater than the sum of its parts computing device. But that's not the world we live in anymore, right? The world we live in now is they take responsibility for creating the brain, if you will, right? The SoC that drives every device they manufacture, with the exception of the Mac Pro. And so now that that part's done, obviously that machine needs to continue to work, right? Johnny Cerrugi's organization needs to continue to do what it's doing. What else do you have to do? How else do you take risk and the leverage of your competitors off the table? Displays. Yeah, build your own displays. Rock and roll. Michelle Faverio, Pew Research Center. Survey. 60% of Americans who used Twitter in the past year have taken a break from the social network. 25% say they are not likely to use Twitter in a year. Yeah, those numbers don't strike me as especially surprising. I can't say that I have much desire to use Twitter, but not because it's Twitter. I think there are some other harder to pin down aspects of what draws one to invest in using one social product versus another. And since I got access to Blue Sky, my personal thesis is, let's run the experiment of what happens if we put all of our wood behind one arrow, right? If we only use this network, how much value can we get out of it in terms of how we feel as a result of using it? what sort of relationships or engagements we build with others as a result of using it. That said, I don't see Twitter going anywhere, and I have no interest in, sort of deleting my presence from that place, because I continue to hold out a sort of, I'm long Twitter, right? Say what you will about it being run by Elon or anything else that's befallen that network over its long life. I think that it is closest to the final form of a social media, social networking tool as anyone else has come. And so while it's not surprising that a lot of people are taking a break from it, I think it's useful to take the break. It's also useful to decide for yourself, when is it time to re-engage, and how do you re-engage differently. I think that's the thing that's going to keep Twitter alive over the long run, in addition to it being a place where the makers of popular culture, one of the places where they put their energy. So, Financial Times. Chip makers TSMC, Samsung, Intel, Micron, Applied Materials, IBM, and Rapidus announced plans to increase manufacturing and deepen tech partnerships in Japan. I haven't followed any of these businesses particularly closely, but am I the only one that hears that statement and thinks, it doesn't sound especially competitive for that cohort of businesses to all agree to partner with one another? That said, are there ways in which they could do it that I think would be ethically defensible? Yeah, sure. Find a way to get economies of scale in how all of your businesses operate with regard to their impact on the environment, their usage of water. There are a variety of places where I would like to see otherwise competing businesses see that they have common obligations to the market, to society, to the planet, or common common requirements for operating their businesses effectively, and that they should find the places where they can work together and do so, and then compete in the areas where they compete. Again, previous story, Apple's been buying display panels from Samsung for a long time. They'll continue to do it for some time to come. So, to the extent that chip makers can find ways to create similar arrangements, probably a good thing. New York Times. Meta's unusual move to open source Llama stands out from its rivals' approach, driven by the belief that sharing its work will help spread its influence in AI. Yeah, it probably will. I continue to believe, which is why the label I've had floating in my head for a while is like AI in everything, that to some degree this stuff has to suffuse itself into as many areas of the technology industry as possible, because otherwise the disproportionate advantage is too much to bear. Maybe that's a little overwrought. But open sourcing your own LLM technology is, I think, again, a good thing to do, right? We take for granted that every modern computing machine that we all carry around in our pockets every day depends on Unix-based operating systems. And building on that common foundation has provided for a tremendous amount of both innovation and opportunity for the last 20 odd years. And I think we could see exactly the same sort of fruitful um, developments over the next 20 years by recognizing that some of the core technology that goes into what we're calling today AI needs to get pushed out and made available to anyone and everyone rather than, oh, this massive corporation has a lot on this technology and therefore they're going to wield it to create inequities in the market and extract rents from anyone and everyone they can. So good work, Meta. Keep going. Manish Singh, TechCrunch. Amazon plans to invest 12.7 billion into its AWS infrastructure in India by 2030, on top of a previous 3.7 billion, and says its spending will support 131.7 thousand full-time jobs. That math checks out, roughly $100,000 US per full-time job, a little more, a little less. Good, yeah. Invest all over the world, normalize, sort of balance the human capital across the planet as much as possible. The idea that Amazon's infrastructure business in India will require such a relatively small number of jobs for what I imagine will be its commensurate output. Is commensurate the right word to use there? Might not be. That's, I don't know, makes you feel a little strange, right? It's how many people are going to be employed and have the ability to provide for themselves and their loved ones as a result of all of this investment. Not that many, but I suppose it's better than not making the investments. Laura Cole, Wired. An investigation finds that hundreds of freelancers hired as customer service staff catfish users into paying for subscriptions on niche dating and hookup sites. That's gross. The the freelance customer service job is a category which is not especially it's an area where we need meaningful improvement. As a people, the floor of what work do we need a human being to do within the larger context of a, predominantly digitized organization or business unit. Those jobs are often quite emotionally and mentally taxing. And so the notion that we already don't extend the same degree of compensation and benefit to the people that do those jobs as we do to the people who build the machinery, the full-time employees, is an issue. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all that a percentage of the people who take those jobs are not necessarily working in the best interests of the human beings that they are paid to interact with or work on behalf of, that they are not especially loyal to the employers who pay their paychecks every 2 weeks, every month, and that they are perfectly willing to explore any and every other avenue for earning more money, even if that includes putting the human beings that they are in contact with as a result of being employed into compromising situations. I find absolutely none of that surprising. And it will be really aggravating and sort of saddening to see the next turn of this story, which it will be invariably $1 trillion corporation X has identified people who it employs who are doing this and fires them. That's not like it's clearly not what they need. Like clearly they need a pay raise, probably some health insurance and a 401k. Give it to them. Mark Harris, TechCrunch. An investigation finds around $15 million in donations to OpenAI when the company was a non-profit are definitively traceable to Elon Musk, below his claims of between $50 and $100 million. Let's root out all the places where Elon gave people a false impression of the state of reality beat is it's going to pay some journalists salaries for a long time to come because he is not the most clear communicator in the world. And he's also continuing to invest himself in businesses which break things in the process of seeking a better version of the world. You can be really unhappy about how Twitter exists, right? How the experience of using Twitter has changed as a result of him buying the business. You can also be unhappy about the reports of substandard conditions in Tesla manufacturing facilities. What I personally don't think you can ignore in the course of criticizing Elon for either of those things, in addition to many others, is the cars keep getting sold and the miles driven that don't require gasoline to be burned keep going up. And the global software product that allows effectively anyone in the world to communicate with effectively anyone in the world, it keeps working. Are you happy about what people are saying there? That's on you. Should you take action if your engagement in either of those products is causing you individual harm? Absolutely. Should you advocate or organize on behalf of others who are harmed as a result of the businesses that Elon Musk owns and operates? Yeah, absolutely. To the extent that you care, spend your time and energy that way. But this notion that we need to continue to hunt for every instance where he's letting us down in the broadest of senses, okay, but can we acknowledge that he's putting satellites into space so that you can mount something the size of a small pizza box to an RV and have access to the internet and the global communications network from anywhere on the planet? Because I haven't seen anybody else do that. Tatum Hunter, Washington Post. Fertility tracking app Freemium settles with the FTC and state attorneys general for $200,000 over allegedly sharing sensitive user information with third parties without consent. $200,000 for taking the gathered information about the fertility of a group of human beings who put their trust in the tools that you build. How much financing does Freemium have to its name? How many engineers work at Freemium who have who have liquid compensation packages of $200,000 or more. This is the definition of a slap on the wrist. I could be wrong. This could be a business that has managed to get very far very fast on a shoestring budget. They could be working with as little as $5 million of seed capital. But the idea that the penalty for doing something like this is simply that you cut a check and then you go about your business, do better. CoinDesk. Greyscale says the United States SEC warned that the Filecoin token meets the definition of a security and asked Greyscale to withdraw its Filecoin trust application. This is crypto malarkey. I think that's pretty obvious. I don't especially want to spend any time on it right now. Frederick Larnois, TechCrunch. Google plans to migrate 1% of Chrome users to Privacy Sandbox and disable third-party cookies for them in Q1 of 2024 and deprecate third-party cookies in H2 of 2024. The cookie apocalypse is coming. What other mechanism Google is engineering in-house in order to be the sole purveyor of information about the browsing habits of Chrome users to the rest of the global attention economy will be interesting to see, right? But being the purveyor of the dominant web browser and then taking away the industry standard for allowing advertisers or anyone who would seek user attention to observe those browsing habits as a user moves across the web. The further we get into this, I mean, God, it was 2 years ago, I feel like, that this really got started, and we're still not done with it. But the deeper into this notion of like cookies are the problem, we need to get away from cookies, the more it looks and at least smells to me like Google figuring out that they can further tighten their grip on, if you want to, well, the simplest possible form, the Nilay Patel form, refining their business model such that for every additional minute that a human being spends on the web, there's a direct relationship to Google's revenue. That's what this looks like. It doesn't, like, calling it Privacy Sandbox, like, I'm not convinced. But maybe I'm wrong. Katie Tarasov, CNBC. Amazon has made 100 Prime Air drone deliveries so far, after projecting 10,000 US deliveries in 2023. Wing has made 330,000 deliveries. Zipline has made 600,000. The arena of small autonomous vehicles to do delivery of physical objects is very exciting. I think it's an example of, AI in everything that doesn't necessarily jump to the front of people's minds, but the software systems, the technology that enables this sort of an experience, it's absolutely going to depend on machines teaching machines in order to operate more effectively, reduce error rates, all those sorts of things. Obviously, the error rate when you're flying something through the sky is it falls out of the sky. Maybe it hits something it's not supposed to hit, or someone it's not supposed to hit. So in that regard, you could say it's good that Amazon is going slowly, but we're talking about multiple orders of magnitude difference in the number of flights that Amazon's project has been able to deliver versus its competitors. So nice to see an arena with healthy competition, I suppose. Mahumida Murgia, Financial Times. AI pioneer Yoshua Bengio, who won the 2018 Turing Award alongside Geoffrey Hinton and Jan LeCun, says governments need to act quickly to, quote unquote, protect the public interest. I generally don't believe in any sort of deep state, one world government orchestrating popular the smoking man from the X-Files, if you're of a similar vintage to myself. I don't generally go in for that sort of a way of looking at the world. That said, the idea that the names in the field of state of the art artificial intelligence are all coming out publicly and raising the alarm bell for what they have helped create, that news beat coming within the same 90-day window as Christopher Nolan's film adaptation of the story of Robert Oppenheimer and the creation of the atomic bomb, the overlap there is poetic, I guess is all I really want to say right now. Washington Post, a survey of 70 cybersecurity experts. 64% favor reauthorization of FISA's Section 702, set to expire at the end of 2023, with some changes to address abuse. I had to look this up while I was resting in between squat sets. The 702 section of the Foreign Intelligence Security Act, I think, from 1978. What it says is U.S. intelligence agencies can surveil, which is to say gather intelligence, phone calls, text messages, yada, 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 without a warrant, so long as that information is produced by foreign individuals, even if those foreign individuals are communicating with U.S. citizens, which is a really interesting sort of rub there, because it goes back to, a song Benedict Evans has been playing for some time, which is, what is your data? This narrative that my data should belong to me. It shouldn't belong to the business that provides me a set of services on top of that data. When you like a photo on Instagram, is the fact that you liked it your data? What about the fact that the author, the publisher of that piece of content received a like? They received a like from you. Is that their data? Like, who does it belong to? The idea that the U.S. intelligence apparatus managed to get a piece of code on the books which says, oh, yeah, we can surveil anyone who's not an American citizen or even is an American citizen without a warrant, so long as they are interacting with people who are not American citizens. Like, that's a really dicey, delicate proposition. And so the idea that it's going to be examined and possibly renewed before expiring at the end of this calendar year is a story worth paying attention to, I think. The Record, Q&A with the FBI's Brian Smith on how the agency generated 300 plus decryption keys from Hive's servers and gave them to victims, avoiding around $130 million in ransom payments. Interesting story for the This Is Cyber file. Cryptography as applied to create secure computing environments, secure environments for exchanging information are extremely important and will be at the center, I think, of a lot of conflict for the next 20 years. The notion that the agency of the US government, in this case, has some ability to unwind the same encryption that uh, would have left victims of, I assume, some form of ransom attack, to be made whole or partially whole. Like, that's it's an interesting wrinkle to the story, right? We've become familiar with the idea that ransomware attacks are a thing that happens. I, at least personally, am not as familiar with moments like this where law enforcement agencies can work on behalf of the people who are the victims of those things to unwind the the code that holds people's information for ransom. So cool. Jacqueline Melanek, TechCrunch. Coinbase launches its Coinbase One subscription in the United States, the UK, and Germany, and Ireland, offering zero trading fees, 24/7 customer support, and more. I don't know that I would have expected Coinbase to get to the freemium model this early, but I suppose there's not going to be there won't be tremendously healthy margins in the cryptocurrency trading business. If you can move money or positions of value as fast as software can operate, then the arbitrage to be found in holding it, having an asset held in one, having a value held in one asset when the other one is floating. Yeah, if you charge people a regular fee in order to make their experience moderately better, then you can guarantee a higher floor of average revenue per user. Why wouldn't you do that? I imagine most of the press around this is going to provide Coinbase users who are sufficiently motivated to use the platform on a regular basis a better experience, which is exactly the value proposition of Twitter Blue. Jane Zhang, Bloomberg. Alibaba reports Q4 revenue up 2% year over year to around $30.3 billion and around $3.2 billion net income, up from around a $2.9 billion net loss in Q4 2022, and plans to spin off its cloud unit and IPO others. Always strange to contemplate the financial performance of a business based in China, because where does the business end and the state authority begin? Who knows? Aside from that, again, I don't feel like I can say a hell of a lot because Alibaba is a business that is so sprawling that I don't know, like, yeah, do you need to move the needle? Sure. And is moving the needle 2% good when your revenue numbers are in the tens of billions of dollars? Yes. Does that mean anything, or can we say anything meaningful about like the long-term prospects of Alibaba as a result of that? Not if they're spinning off one unit and looking to spin off other ones. That to me is a signal of this business is becoming unwieldy. Diana Lee, Bloomberg. Grammarly announces Grammarly Business, which uses generative AI to summarize key points in email threads, compose replies, and more, rolling out in June 2023. Yeah, do it as fast as you can. This is a perfect example of AI in everything, right? How do we get from there's this fundamentally new power in technology products to it's just a thing that makes anything a human being would use a machine to produce easier, better, faster. Why not? Right? We can't put it back. So, I don't relish the idea that, again, to cite something I first heard Neil Patel say, I'm going to give a one sentence prompt to a machine that's going to produce a 3-paragraph message that's going to get sent to another human being who's going to have another machine summarize that 3 paragraphs back into one sentence in order for the two of us to communicate. Not the greatest use of human effort and ingenuity, but again, let's just do it. Let's get past this moment of, holy cow, it's so powerful. What are we going to do? To, oh yeah, it's a thing. It's available to anybody who uses a computer machine.